Well, I think we've gotten some pretty nasty reminders over the last several months that tsunamis are a real threat here on our coast. I think with the events of yesterday, a lot of people flashed back to what happened in December. Remember that? It was only 7 months ago. And in December, National Weather Service issued a tsunami warning for the Bay Area, not just a mild advisory like what we had yesterday. It was a warning as in, this is coming. You need to evacuate now. And we had all of the chaotic visuals of people trying to get out of Pacifica. It was a huge story. No doubt you remember it. Hopefully you were not caught up in it. But that had to come back to mind to a lot of people from yesterday, especially when you take into account that there was about 2 hours or so where we were kind of in flux. We had a tsunami watch, but we did not yet know how intense the waves were going to be. It took 2 hours or a little over for the Tsunami Warning Center to refine that to an advisory. So I just want to spend a little bit of time and go into some of the detail on how these things work and why they are so difficult for the officials to be better about this, to be faster about this, to be more specific about it. First thing we want to do is address the fact that as I speak, and I'm recording this now, on Wednesday night, well over 24 hours since that earthquake happened, and we still have a beach hazard statement for our coast. It doesn't expire until we get to Thursday morning at 5 a.m. That is a very long time to still be dealing with the after effects of this. Why are there still waves coming at us if that earthquake happened so long ago and the initial wave was supposed to get here as it did a little after midnight on Tuesday night? What's taking so long? Let's go into a little bit of perspective on this. I just want to show you how these things work, and hopefully this will ready you for the next one, because there's going to be another one of these. And rather than go through the chaos every time, a little more knowledge on how these things work and how the forecast is put together for them, I think could help ease some minds the next time this happens. First, what I'm going to use for an example is not the tsunami from yesterday, because it's so recent that the Tsunami Warning Center has not produced one of those real beautiful high-resolution imagery playbacks of what it was. So what I am going to use is the last time that we had a tsunami that really did cause significant damage in California. It happened in 1964. The great earthquake in Alaska in 1964 was around a 9. And that one really did significant damage in California in Crescent City. And when you look at how these things emanate out, there's your initial line, and then behind it you get all these waves, these kind of follow-up waves. We like to think of this as one simple tsunami coming your way, get in, get it over with. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. Here's the leading edge. So this would be like what we had forecast to arrive here yesterday, a little after midnight, which it did. But then you've got all the waves back here, which are still coming. The way to think about this is, it's like dropping a pebble into a pond. Those ripples then radiate out. And here's where it gets real chaotic. When those waves of energy hit other barriers like the Hawaiian Islands here, watch what happened with the 1964 tsunami. The initial line hits the Hawaiian Islands, and then the energy actually bounces back and reflects from there. And look how chaotic this all got back here. Because now you've just got this ocean of water, which is just responding to any and everything that it encounters, and waves are refracting and reflecting and moving back and forth. This is why you are still under a threat from a tsunami for quite some time after the initial waves come through. This is why we still have a beach hazard statement until 5 a.m. on Thursday for an earthquake that happened our time, Tuesday afternoon. So hopefully that at least explains a little bit about why this is taking so long. The other thing about these earthquakes that's helpful to take into consideration is, as they come in, you've probably no doubt seen this. That's when it started here in San Francisco a little after midnight, and there are your waves. And you can see how it's weakened as we've gone through time. That's your visual that's getting us into Wednesday night and Thursday night. But the other thing about tsunamis, location is everything. So the one that happened yesterday happened over here, right off the coast here, that coast of Russia. And that significant earthquake was farther away from us. That means it's got to travel through more of the ocean and dissipate more of its energy before it gets here. We still have to be on guard. That could still be a damaging tsunami when it gets to the coast of California. But a tsunami that emanates from an earthquake here is going to be able to do more damage. It's just closer. This earthquake was a 9.0. So there was the intensity. There was also the proximity in 1964. But there was also the direction in which the energy radiated out. That's another factor that goes into these. In 1964, the waves were pointed directly at us. We're going to see what the visualization looks like from this one, but most likely it was not like a direct laser beam of energy that was just kind of confined and narrowed in a band pointed almost directly towards the Pacific Northwest, and that's why they got hit particularly hard. So location is everything on these two. And then the last thing that I want to cover with you on this is why it takes so long for us to figure this all out. Why do we need to wait hours before they can give us clear confidence in their forecast? And here's just a quick review on that. For that one, we've got to use the 2011 major tsunami that was sparked by a significant earthquake in Japan. There's the coast of Japan. It's a beautiful representation put out by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. That earthquake, like the one yesterday, like the one in 1964, was caused on the kind of fault that really produces the biggest tsunamis. It was a subduction zone. No doubt you've heard this plenty of times by now over the last few days. But here's the important distinction. It's not the earthquake that causes the tsunami. That shaking happens way underground, oftentimes tens, maybe even hundreds, but likely tens of miles underground. That itself, you can feel the shaking, but that cannot cause a tsunami. The tsunami happens when something happens at the surface, at this fault zone. And because these faults, by their very nature, are so deep under the ocean, we don't know what happened. We know that with subduction zones, oftentimes one plate bounces back after a major subduction. So you get one plate that goes down, and there's usually a feedback of uplift that happens in the crust. That's how you get the tsunami. You are moving a section of the Earth's crust up several feet. Think of the enormous amount of energy involved in that. So it's at the surface here, not the epicenter of the earthquake, where the tsunami happens. And because these things happen so deep underwater, we don't know what happened. We have no visuals down there. We have no way of measuring every single stretch of subduction zones that ring the entire Pacific for us to have a clear indication of how much uplift there was. We have no way to measure that. We can tell you how strong the earthquake was. We can tell you it was on a particularly dangerous fault, but we got to wait to know exactly how bad that's going to be. Oftentimes, we're waiting for this wave energy to emanate out and get to enough buoys in the ocean before we're able to have the information to put this together. Now, that brings me back to the final thought in this conversation. That answers the question why it took 2 hours for them to elevate the watch to an advisory. But what happened in December, this last December, when Pacifica was thrown into a panic and chaos and had to evacuate under a tsunami warning? And here's the scientific justification for that. We know that fault's different. In fact, let's come back to the map here for a second. That earthquake, obviously, remember how we were talking about proximity is everything? So the earthquake yesterday happened on the other side of the Pacific. The earthquake in December happened right here, right off Cape Mendocino. Now look how close that is to us. Now it was a 7.0 earthquake when that happened. 7.0 is nowhere near as strong as the 1964 earthquake or the one that happened on Tuesday. Those were far stronger. But it just so happens that a 7.0 just happens to be the minimum threshold at which we know earthquakes are capable of spawning tsunamis, capable of affecting the land above them to a degree that the shifts, motion, uplift, landslides, whatever it might be. A 7.0 is strong enough to do it. We have enough historical record that that's the threshold. So here now we find ourselves with the Tsunami Warning Center back in December, having a 7.0 earthquake right off Cape Mendocino and having no way to know what kind of uplift took place, and knowing that they could not even wait for the readings on the buoy because it was so close to us. They had to act immediately and err on the side of caution because the danger was too high should that have spawned a tsunami. So that's why we got a warning in December. It was too close, and there are too many unknowns under the sea floor. Hopefully through time, we get a better way to monitor these things, a more thorough network of buoys in the ocean so that we can quickly get information when we need it. And hopefully with advancing the science, we'll have better ways to know what happened on that part of the ocean floor when that major earthquake happened. We're not quite there yet, so we're dealing with the best science we have. That's why yesterday it took 2 hours before we could know if that watch needed to be a warning for us again or a much more low-grade advisory, which it was. And unfortunately, that's also why that fault up there is too close, and the next time it happens, we're going to have to go with the best of the science and err on the side of caution. Just wanted to go over all this stuff again, because I think it is still fresh on a lot of people's minds. Now is the time to start digging into these things, so that hopefully when the next time we find ourselves maybe having to evacuate the coast, we can feel a little more, at least knowledgeable about it, and maybe feel a little more sense of, I wouldn't want to say control, but knowledge is at least calming. And that's kind of what we're going for on this. All right, that's this look at the Tsunami's Weather Extra.